Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Love Meets Literature. Very excited for this episode. It is our Book of the Month August picks. Always love this episode. It's so much fun going over everything. I am your host, Rachel, and you can find me on Instagram at Paperbacks and Sketchbooks.
And I am your other host, Joe, and you can find us at Love Meets Literature.
Please do give us a follow. You can find us literally everywhere on social media. You can listen to us nearly everywhere as well. A follow will help us immensely. So I'm very excited to chat about these Book of the Month picks. I know some of them were very polarizing this month, especially on social media. I know a lot of people who skipped. However, I did not skip. There was one that I'm very looking forward to reading, and you are going to have to guess which one that is at the end of this episode.
That should be fun. I haven't looked at these at all, so this is my first exposure to them, is going to be us talking about them.
That's good, because it's going to be harder for me to guess what you will pick. But before we jump into that, I have some very exciting wedding news. Our save the dates have officially been sent out. So now it's official. We are officially having a wedding on the date that we selected.
It's finally official.
Yeah, there's still a long road ahead to get everything set up and whatnot, but I think it's going to only get easier from here, maybe. I just hope it doesn't get more stressful than it has been. I mean, I think the flower fiasco was the most stressful thing for me. Everything else is like smooth sailing.
Yeah, I think most of the heavy hitting items are kind of out of the way, and hopefully we just have smooth sailing for the rest of it.
I really hope so. Nobody wants to talk to us until next year now anyway, which is fine by me. It gives me time to kind of decide extra decor that I want and kind of lay out more of how I want the flowers done and all that jazz. So I'm excited. It's going to come together. I just need to have that mindset that no matter what happens on the actual wedding day, I just got to go with the flow.
Yeah, that's definitely going to have to be, ingrained into the both of us, to be honest. So that way we can just enjoy the day and not stress about anything that happens.
But I can't do that. I'm very controlling over how things play out, especially when it's me. I need it to go perfectly.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's what wedding planners are for.
That's true. I mean, it is the big day, right? So you want it to go perfect, but there's always going to be something. That's what I've heard, is there's going to always be a little something that doesn't quite go the way that you want it to. So you'll just have to roll with the punches.
It'll be fun either way. So, how has your past reading week been?
It's been good. I finished a book. It was a nonfiction book, my first one in a very long time.
Oh, nonfiction. I'm not a nonfiction reader. I just can't do it for some reason.
It was interesting. It was about the stock market, which can be very boring for some people. I found it to be really interesting. The actual information that was shared in there was really cool. The book was called How to Day Trade for a Living by Andrew Aziz. And while I don't plan on learning how to day trade necessarily, if you know what that is, it got recommended to me because I was interested in the stock market and things like that. And while the information is geared towards day traders, the overall information is what they recommend everyone to read, or why they recommend everyone to read it. And it was really interesting. It's weird to rate a nonfiction book because a lot of the times it's just facts being shared. But in this case, I definitely would give it a 3 at best. The writing inside of it was very odd because he kept always going, he would explain a concept or he would introduce a concept, and then he would say, we're going to get more into this in chapter 7.
Interesting.
And he would do that 2 or 3 times within the same thing. And in my head, I was kind of well, wouldn't you just explain it now if we're talking about it now? And then instead, when you get to chapter 7, he goes to explain what it is, but it's kind of he doesn't fully explain it. He just says this is what it is. And so I was like, that was very confusing. I think like if you were in class and your teacher did that, you would be like, I have no idea what's happening right now. So I had to do like research outside of the book to kind of understand the topic.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people rate nonfiction books based on how well the information is laid out and how well it's explained and how interesting the writing is. Because even if it's nonfiction, I feel like you still want it to be interesting. You don't want it to be super dry. You don't want it to sound like the author is lecturing you on the subject.
Right. Yeah. I think it was, I think he could have done a lot better of a job just explaining the things outright rather than saying, oh, we'll get to that later, or oh, I'll explain that later. Besides that, the rest of the information was really interesting. And there was a little bit of a weird part at the end of the book where he takes like a case study of a person who followed like the steps and the guides that he gives in the book. And that I know that he did that because he like wanted you to get inspired by this person, but I found it to be incredibly boring and incredibly like not interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the nature of a case study, isn't it? Like, we think it's boring because we're not scientific.
Right. And that's a fair argument for sure. I just was like, in my head when I read it, I was like, this would have been fantastic as its own book with a like a full analysis of everything with that instead of at the end of this book. I just thought it was kind of weirdly placed in there, which is what kind of knocked off some more points for me.
So, would you say that this book also is getting a lower rating because you still don't really know how to day trade?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up cuz it gives you the steps and like you could go out and do it, but at the same time I feel like it's left out so much information. Like a great example actually is, and I'm not going to get into all the details cuz like I said it might not be super interesting, but there's a concept in there called shorting, which is when you think a stock is going to go down and so you do a thing called shorting. Again, I'm not going to explain it completely. But what they don't tell you is that in order to do that, you have to have like your account set up in a certain way and you have to have a certain amount of money beforehand in your account, which again, you would never know unless you went and did the extra research like I did. Because I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. Looked more into it and I was like, whoa, that's way different than I would have expected. And so those are things that I was like, in my head, I'm like, that is a critical piece of information. Like that is extremely important. And it was just totally left out.
The stock market has never really interested me, so I don't really know what to say to that.
Well, I think that's fair, but I guess the overarching thing that I'm trying to point out is like, if you're going to write a nonfiction book, you have to include all the information.
Right.
You can't just skip past certain things because you're like, it's not that important.
Yeah, that's kind of odd that he would have left out an important piece of information.
I think it's a lot of the times when you become like an expert in something, you often forget that the beginners know nothing. And so you forget to explain like the utmost basic pieces because it's just automatic to you at that point. He's just like, oh, yeah, everyone has their account set up this way or this much money, or everybody knows how to dribble a basketball. I don't need to explain that, but it's kind of one of those things where the athlete isn't always necessarily the best coach.
Well, hopefully the next nonfiction book you pick up is better than this one.
That's true. Besides that, I've been reading other things. I'm actually reading multiple books at a time, which is very unusual for me. Then I'm also reading Sea of Monsters.
I love Sea of Monsters.
And then I'm also continuing my way through ACOTAR.
Yeah, you got to get going on that because I need your thoughts.
I know. I'm making a goal for myself to get back on the train of reading a chapter a day. And if I do that, it should be done in like, I think I have like 20 something chapters left. So I'm going to try to read a little bit more than that because I like to get it done pretty quickly.
Some of the chapters in that book are really short.
Yeah, when it's a really short one that's like 2 pages, I'll read the next one as well. So that will hopefully keep moving it along. But it's been pretty interesting so far, actually.
Yeah, I got to do my reread of A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the third book. My buddy read partner just went ahead and started it. And I was like, hey, We didn't make a set start date yet. What are you doing? And she's like, I needed to know what happened. Which is fine. I'm happy she's enjoying it. So I'm not mad that she went ahead without me. But at the same time, I'm like, you didn't give me a warning that you were going to be starting it.
Yeah, excuse me, you're off schedule. We need to get back on schedule,
I didn't
please.
even create a schedule for it yet. So
So yeah, that's even worse. It's like can't even measure how far off schedule it is.
but I can't be mad because she's loving it, and she thought she wouldn't enjoy it because she had previously DNF'd the first ACOTAR book when we were in high school. She just thinks that at that point in her life, she wasn't really into fantasy, but now she's more into fantasy, so she's enjoying it more. So I'm excited to keep continuing it with her, even though she did jump off the train and just went rogue and started book 3 without me. It's okay.
Maybe that'll give you extra motivation to read it as soon as possible.
Yes, but I have 2 library books that I need to read, and then I'm not checking out any more library books until I get through some of my physical books that I really want to read.
Yeah, I was just looking over at it on the shelf and I just realized how ginormous it is.
Yeah, so I need a good chunk of time to be able to sit down and actually read it. I've learned that it's easier for me to get into a book when I sit down and have intentional reading time. Like I have a good half hour to an hour to really get into the story. And then it's better when I put the book down because then I'm more interested in what's happening.
It's like in high school or middle school when you had to have silent reading time.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. So I don't like to start a book really late at night when I know I'm going to be going to sleep. And I don't like to start a book like in the middle of the workday when I know I'm going to keep getting interrupted. So I need to like have a set time to start a book.
I think that's fair and probably a good idea, actually. How has your reading week been?
It's been pretty good. I was kind of slumpish for a while, as we discussed, but I decided to pick up a quick romance read on Kindle Unlimited. It was another Daphne Perry book. It was the second one in her Lark Cove series, so different series than the one that I had previously finished, and it was called Timid. And I ultimately gave it 4 stars. So this book was fine. Like I liked how everything played out in the end, but I really was kind of annoyed at the main characters. We had Willa and Jackson, and I was not a fan of Jackson at all. He was just so arrogant and moody, and like he kind of gave off red flags. And it's like, I would not choose this guy for myself because he's too hot headed and whatnot. And then Willa was just so shy, and she would not tell him this major thing that happened between them that he did not remember. And she like just would not tell him, and he would be just going about his days like being nice to her, like asking her out on a date cuz he liked her, and she'd be like no, and he'd be like why, I thought you had a crush on me, cuz it's like a known thing that she had a crush on him since she was 17 and she's 26 now. So it's a significant amount of time that she's had a crush on this man, and he knows, and everyone knows. And so everyone's like, Willow, why are you turning him down on a date? And she's like, because this thing happened and he doesn't remember. And everyone's like, you should just tell him. And she's like, no, like I don't want to ruin anything by telling him. And it's like, just tell him already. One thing I cannot stand in books is when there is a lack of communication. It's worse than miscommunication, because at this point, you're not even communicating. You're not saying anything. You're just being mysterious. Like, no, I like you, but I'm not going to go out with you. Like, what?
That is incredibly annoying.
It was so annoying, but they kind of redeemed themselves towards like the middle-ish part of the book because she finally told him what was up, and they like, they went about their merry ways, and then it was all good. But it's like most of this book could have been shorter if you just communicated in the first place and told him and whatever. But I guess there would not have been a story if the author didn't have them do that whole rigmarole. But it was just not my jam. I wasn't vibing, but at the same time, I had to know what was going to happen. So I was flying through this book, and alas, it got me out of my reading slump. So points for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's good.
When I read romance books like this, I usually rate them between 3 and 4 stars, but that doesn't mean I didn't like them. It just means there was like a certain trope or something in there that irked me, but it was still a good read overall. Because I did enjoy the ending. Like, I thought it was nice how they ended up, but it was just the whole getting there. I was like, are you serious?
Yeah, I think that's really frustrating because like part of the book is the journey. So then if you're just like holding out for a good ending on one half, yeah, that's nice because you get the good ending, but on the other half, it's like our whole ride there was a little bit annoying.
The whole ride was rough.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, and I'm still going to continue the series. So that was Timid by Daphne Perry, #2 in the Lark Cove series, and you can find it on Kindle Unlimited. So, once again, this episode is our Book of the Month August picks, and I am very excited to talk about these because I feel like a lot of them are not in our usual genres. So, I'm interested to see what we would each pick. And it was a nice surprise in my box this month because Book of the Month included an additional little short story. I believe it was called Volume 0. I didn't take a good look at it, and I have not read it yet, but it's really not long. Seems like it'll be short and sweet, but it's supposed to be like a little promotional thing for another book, I think. But they usually don't include little extras like that, so it was a really nice surprise, and I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Do you know like what the genre or anything of the extra is?
I don't know. I did not take a close look. I
Right.
just looked at it and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I kind of tossed it aside.
It's like one of those surprise books where you just like unwrap it and then read whatever it is.
Like the blind date with a book.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those are always cool. So I'll have to read that short story and see what it's all about. But I'm very excited for my pick. I already chose because I didn't skip Book of the Month this month. I did get it. So hopefully you can guess correctly what I got. Hopefully you did not see my unboxing on Instagram.
I did not.
Good, good. So complete surprise. Obviously, this is your first time looking at them. So we'll see what you pick. So let's jump into Book of the Month. Our first Book of the Month option for August was The Wedding People by Alison Espach, and this is a contemporary fiction. The quick take is if you have ever found yourself crying on the dance floor at someone else's wedding, this one is for you. And it is tagged as emotional, marriage issues, nonlinear timeline, and wedding. So Book of the Month does this thing where for each of their monthly picks, they offer you a quick take if you don't want to read the whole synopsis, and then they offer you tags of just like main themes that the book is sort of about, or just descriptors so you can better know what you're getting yourself into when you order the book. But if we take a look at the full synopsis, it's a beautiful day in Newport, Rhode Island, when Phoebe Stone arrives at the Grand Cornwall Inn wearing a green dress and gold heels, not a bag in sight, alone. She's immediately mistaken by everyone in the lobby for one of the wedding people, but she's actually the only guest at the Cornwall who isn't here for the big event. Phoebe is here because she's dreamed of coming for years. She hoped to shuck oysters and take sunset sails with her husband, only now she's here without him, at rock bottom and determined to have one last decadent splurge on herself. Meanwhile, the bride has accounted for every detail and every possible disaster the weekend might yield except for, well, Phoebe and Phoebe's plan, which makes it that much more surprising when the two women can't stop confiding in each other. So to me, this sounds kind of just like your classic, maybe women's fiction, contemporary fiction, like kind of like a story of a woman finding herself after a tragedy. And it could be interesting. I've seen pretty good reviews for this online, so a lot of people seem to like it, but I did hear it's really heavy, so it's not like a lighthearted, fun kind of read.
I was going to say, knowing that now, what I was going to say originally was, this sounds fun, but you've said otherwise. This just sounds to me like surface level of what you said, just kind of
Like a women's fiction?
yeah, like the only thing I can think in my head now is a coming of age story, but that's not what it is.
No, it's not, because she's already an adult.
Right. It's like, I don't know if they have a term for it, but yeah, after someone has gone through a tragedy and then they, try to like reinvent themselves or something like that. That's what it feels like to me.
I think it could be good. Obviously, a lot of people love it, but you do, I think, have to be in the mood for a heavier read. It is tagged as being emotional. So, emotions.
Yes, those.
What's our next book of the month pick?
All right, our next one here is called Five Star Stranger by Kat Tang. And this is literary fiction. The quick take is this astute exploration of loneliness, connection, and the gig economy follows everyday life of a stranger for hire. Our tags are psychological, sad, unreliable narrator, and salacious. For our deep dive, in an age where online ratings are all powerful, Five Star Stranger follows the adventures of a top rated man on the Rental Stranger app, a place where users can hire pretend fiance, a wingman, or an extra mourner for a funeral. Referred to only as Stranger, the narrator navigates New York City under the guise of characters he plays, always maintaining a professional distance from his clients. But when a nosy patron threatens to upheave his long-term role as a father to a young girl, Stranger begins to reckon with his attachment to his pretend daughter, her mother, and his own fraught past. Now he must confront the boundaries he has drawn and explore the legacy of abandonment that shaped his life.
It sounds very interesting. I didn't know that you could hire people to be like a stand-in whatever for events or, I guess, everyday life.
Yeah, this is a very interesting concept.
It's supposed to be sort of a take on the gig economy, as it says in the quick take. So people always just picking up extra gigs, make more money. And I've seen reviews for this online as well, and it seems a lot of people really like it. So it might be one to check out. I think it could be interesting seeing how this author portrays the gig economy and this stranger that she's writing about.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool concept, like the idea of a narrator or the unreliable narrator being this stranger for hire or participating in the stranger for hire kind of deal seems really cool. It's like literally hiring an actor for everyday life, which is cool. And so this is one that I feel like people would have the polarizing feelings for. Like I feel like you would read this and you would either absolutely love it or you would absolutely hate it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's interesting that a literary fiction has an unreliable narrator. I usually only see that trope mentioned for thrillers.
I guess there is the psychological tag as well. So I wonder if there is that kind of underlying thriller tone to it, maybe.
Well, it's probably because this man is a stranger, so and they refer to him as stranger. So it's possible that we never really know his name. We don't know who he is at all in this book, and that's why he's unreliable because we don't know him and he's just pretending.
Yeah, seems very interesting.
Our next one I'm super excited for because I do have an advanced copy of this sitting on my NetGalley shelf. So I need to get to that because this book published on August 6th. So I'm a little behind, but I will get there. And it is called The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. And this is a romance. I have read other Casey McQuiston books. Well, a book. I read their book, One Last Stop, and it was very, very good. So I'm very excited for The Pairing. I've already heard very good things about it. So the quick take is what could be more delicious than exes on a food and wine tour trying and failing to prove they're over each other? And this is tagged as being 400 plus pages. Wow, that's a long book. Multiple points of view, LGBTQ themes, and extra spicy. Now, if we take a deeper dive, we have Theo and Kit, and they have been a lot of things. Childhood best friends, crushes, in love, and now estranged exes. After a brutal breakup on the transatlantic flight to their dream European food and wine tour, they exited each other's lives once and for all. Time apart has done them good. Theo has found confidence as a hustling bartender by night and aspiring sommelier by day, with a long roster of casual lovers. Kit, who never returned to America, graduated as the reigning sex god of his pastry school class and now bakes at one of the finest restaurants in Paris. All that remains is the unused voucher for the European tour that never happened. Good for 48 months after its original date and about to expire. 4 years later, it seems like a great idea to finally take the trip. Solo, separately. It's not until they board the tour bus that they discover they've both accidentally had the exact same idea, and now they're trapped with each other for 18 days of stunning views, luscious flavors, and the most romantic cities of France, Spain, and Italy. It's fine. There's nothing left between them. So much nothing that when Theo suggests a friendly wager to see who can sleep with their hot Italian tour guide first, Kit is totally game. And why stop there? Why not a full-on European hookup competition? But sometimes a taste of everything only makes you crave what you can't have. Thoughts?
I think they need to add another extra to the extra spicy.
Possibly. But I'm very excited for this. I've seen nothing but rave reviews. I don't mind a spicy romance sometimes. And I think it's interesting how it combines food and wine with all of these other themes. And I feel like it's just going to take me on like a delicious tour of Europe.
In more ways than one.
Possibly. But I really hope that the settings are super descriptive because I want to be immersed in these countries. I want to taste the food as I'm reading about it. I just hope it's very descriptive. I'm just like, in terms of the food, not anything else. Like, I just want the setting and the food to be like real.
Well, based on this, I can assure you that they're going to be descriptive about everything that they possibly can. So
Probably.
I definitely think the food and the location is going to be really cool for the story. It also sounds like the tour, I don't know if the entire thing is on a bus, so I bet that would create some interesting dynamics as well.
Probably. I'm very intrigued about what the dynamic between Theo and Kit is going to be. There's nothing I love more in a romance than seeing two people who supposedly hate each other have to basically get along with each other.
Isn't that the enemies to lovers trope?
Kind of, but these people they've dated their exes. So I guess it could be enemies to lovers, but this is also, it could be considered second chance if they do end up back together in the end.
Learn about more tropes here.
Yes, there's a whole slew of tropes.
The next one is Like Mother, Like Daughter by Kimberly McCrate. And this is a thriller. The quick take for this one is when her mother abruptly goes missing, a college student must quickly piece together the mystery left in her wake. This is multiple point of views, non-linear timeline, mama drama, and New York City. Cleo arrives for dinner at her childhood home, only to find food burning in the oven, no sign of her mother, and a bloody shoe under the sofa. The polar opposite of Cleo, whose out-of-control emotions and unsafe behavior have created an seemingly unbridgeable rift between mother and daughter. Kat is the epitome of glamorous perfection, a happily married, successful corporate lawyer. What Cleo doesn't know is that Kat's not just a lawyer. She's her firm's fixer. She's good at it, too. Growing up in a dangerous group home taught her how to think fast, stay calm under pressure, and recognize a real threat when she sees one. And in the days leading up to her disappearance, Kat has become aware of all too many of those. As Cleo digs deeper into her mother's disappearance, it becomes clear that the two have far more in common than they ever could have imagined.
Seems interesting. I don't know what I would do if I came home and I saw a bloody shoe under the sofa.
I would be like, that's gross. And then also, whose shoe is this?
Yeah, I'd be like, that's nasty, and I think I would call the police.
That's probably a good start, yeah.
But this one does sound really good. It sounds like it will be a fast read. I do enjoy when thrillers have this non-linear timeline. So if you're unfamiliar, the non-linear timeline means you basically jump back and forth between two different points in time. And it just makes for an interesting story. I don't know how this one is laid out, but it's possible it could go like jump between the past and the present to like what happened before the mom disappeared to the now when the daughter is trying to figure out what happened to her mom. So I think that would be interesting. But again, I don't know how it's laid out. That's all theoretical. But it would make me happy if I was right without even knowing if I'm right.
Yeah, I think this one sounds super interesting. I'm definitely a sucker for like when people aren't all that they seem, like how she's a lawyer, but she's also the fixer. And so there's like multiple levels and it creates like a much deeper character. I love when a character gets really deep and you can like, fully sort of immerse yourself into the story because of the characters.
Yes, yes. I think this would be a very interesting thriller. Mama drama intrigues me.
Mama drama is a great tag.
I really like New York City as a setting in thrillers too, because there's just so much to play around with because New York is a huge city. It's usually busy and bustling, and it just makes for a good thriller setting.
I feel like lately a lot of the thrillery stuff, at least that I've seen in passing, has been taking place in like more remote kind of areas. So it's a nice change of pace for it to actually happen in like a bigger city.
Yeah, thrillers that take place in the middle of nowhere, I'm kind of just like, you're asking for it if you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, stop playing in the cornfields and maybe you won't get attacked or something.
It's like in Criminal Minds when people are like out in the cornfields in the dark, and I'm like, are you stupid?
Yeah, they're like, be careful, stay indoors. There's a man on the loose. And they're like, let's go play in the cornfield at midnight. You're like, what are you doing?
And yeah, what are you doing? They just, they want to face danger, I guess.
I guess so. Makes life more exciting, apparently.
And our final book of the month pick for August is Hera by Jennifer Saint. And this is fantasy. So, quick take. In this epic Greek retelling that interrogates power and patriarchy, an oft-maligned goddess is recast in a new light. And it's tagged as emotional, feminist, salacious, and based on a classic. So, I assume this is based on the tale of Hera. If we take a deeper look, when the immortal goddess Hera and her brother Zeus overthrow their tyrannical father, she dreams of ruling at his side. But as they establish their reign on Mount Olympus, Hera begins to see that Zeus is just as ruthless and cruel as the father they betrayed. While Zeus ascends, Hera is relegated to the role of wife and mother, a role she never wanted. She was always born to rule, but must she lose herself in perpetuating this cycle of violence and cruelty? Or can she find a way to forge a better world? So I had recently tried reading a book by Jennifer Saint called Ariadne, and that was supposed to be the tale of Ariadne, and it was dubbed as a feminist reimagining of the myth. However, I had beef with it because it did not seem feminist at all. Like it basically just retold word for word the myth. There was nothing different about it, nothing reimagined in my opinion. It read too academic-y, like it was too information dump for me. I needed something to pull me out of it a little bit. I needed some more action. I needed like actual character dialogue instead of the narrator, who was Ariadne, just being like, so and so did this, so and so did that. Like it just wasn't my type of writing style that I vibe with. It was just dry to me, kind of boring. So it makes me hesitant to read Hera because it is by the same author. And again, it is dubbed as a feminist reimagining, a feminist take on the myth. But will it really be a feminist take on the myth? Because Ariadne definitely was not, because the second Theseus came into the picture, she was like, I'm so honored to be his wife. I just want to live to serve him. And that was basically the whole story. And there's nothing feminist about that.
Yeah. I think that missed the point a little bit.
It did. And so I'm just like, is Hera going to be the same way? Is she going to be submissive to some man? Is she like, what's going to happen? Now, I don't really know the myth of Hera. I would have to look it up before I read the book just to see how it is. But I don't like to one and done an author, so I might pick it up just to see what it's like. But it makes me very hesitant because of the writing style in Ariadne.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'm very curious how much of the story that they're going to go into about Hera, because I know like the story of Hercules, the movie, obviously, is different than the actual myth. And in the actual myth, Hera plays like a much larger, more important role. And so I'm curious if maybe that's going to get factored into here, or I don't know. Because I know Hera has very like deep stories into her myths, but they're just often not talked about. You don't really find many retellings of the story, whether reimagined or just a straight up retelling.
Yes. So I'm hoping there is something that the author does in this one that puts her own spin on it and actually does portray Hera in a more feminist light, because she definitely did Ariadne dirty, but that's just me.
Well, I guess you'll have to see.
I know a lot of people really liked Ariadne, so it's probably a me problem that I didn't vibe with it.
I guess that's maybe a good judge is to read Hera, and then you can say for certain whether you. I think like 2 books, that's probably fair, whether you like an author or not.
I usually give an author 2 chances, and then I'm like super, super hesitant to pick up a third by them. So we'll just have to see. Well, now that we've gone through all of our book of the month picks, we had The Wedding People, 5-Star Stranger, The Pairing, Like Mother, Like Daughter, and Hera. A good variety of genres, good variety of stories. Now it's time for us to decide which book would the other person choose for themselves. This is really hard because I really don't know which one you would choose for yourself.
I'm trying to make that decision right now. I'm also trying to think of which one you would pick, or I guess you did pick.
I have an inkling of what you would choose. Now, again, this is really hard because I feel like none of these are really like genres that we gravitate towards. I mean, obviously, I gravitate towards romance, and we do have a romance on here, but I have the advanced copy of it.
Right. And I also gravitate towards fantasy, but we just talked about that one as well.
I know, I kind of like bashed on Jennifer Saint, which I didn't mean to. I'm sure her writing style appeals to many people. It's just a me issue. Are you ready?
I have chosen mine. So who should go first? Do you want to pick first, or should I pick first?
I'll pick first.
Okay.
I feel like I always make you pick first. I'll go first. I think you would choose 5-Star Stranger by Kat Tang.
That is correct.
Oh my gosh, I'm 3 for 3 now.
You are, yeah.
I got your aardvark pick last month correct, and I got our very first book of the month episode. I got your pick on that correct as well.
That's true, yeah.
Wow, I just know you so well.
You do. Definitely out of these ones, I think 5-Star Stranger sounds extremely interesting overall, but out of these, I think this one is definitely the one that at least I'm most interested in reading. So I guess you gave a couple of things away, which is helping my choice.
I'm trying to give you little hints.
It's between 2 for me. I think I'm going to go with, you know how you do that thing in school where like you pick an answer and then later you go back and you're like, no, that can't be right. It's got to be this one. And then it ended up being the first one.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to do that to myself. And I'm just going to go with my original thought. I think you picked Like Mother, Like Daughter.
I did pick Like
Yes.
Mother, Like Daughter.
I'm 2 for 3, I think.
I think so. Yeah, you got
right.
my aardvark pick wrong.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, but I did choose Like Mother, Like Daughter, and I'm very excited to read it. I feel like I'm back in my thriller era genre-wise because I did finish up the 4th unsub book recently, and I absolutely loved it, and it just makes me want to read all the thrillers, and I'm kind of itching to get through my library books, which are 2 fantasy books, so I can go back and read some of the thrillers on my shelf.
Yeah. I feel like thrillers, well, I guess I only read those like 2 little novellas, but there is something about a thriller or when a book gets suspenseful that just makes it fly by. Like you just start reading it so fast.
It does. And then before you know it, you've been sitting there for like an hour and you're like, oh, I've already read this much.
It's kind of like when a show or a movie is like gets suspenseful or has like really good story and it just sucks you in. I feel like thrillers are like the cheat code for that. They just always pull you in.
They do. But there are such thing as bad thrillers. Some thrillers are boring to me. I have DNF'd a lot of thrillers just because some of the stories are so overdone and it takes forever to get to the point and there's not anything happening early enough in the story to capture my attention. I'm very picky about it. But at the same time, I have read a lot of thrillers that I really liked.
It's definitely a double-edged sword because I think it would be very easy to like make it really predictable or like you said not get to the point fast enough so it's like you're like okay, we know that this is the bad guy, let's, get to the resolution kind of deal.
Right. Or sometimes they keep going in circles and you're like, okay. So that I don't like. Even in like any other story, I'm not a huge fan of just going in circles. I'm like, that's, do something different, please.
I've noticed that definitely when I've read detective books,
Hmm.
like the cat and mouse is 100% that like double-edged sword. It's so
Yeah. Cat and mouse is really good when it's done well.
yeah,
But some authors do cat and mouse in the sense where they just like drag it on too long and then they
yeah,
kind of they end up like doing similar things that they've previously already done. But I like it better when it's still cat and mouse, but like less cat and mouse. Like make them do interesting things for a longer period of time.
yeah. I think it can get old really quickly when it's like they're trying to prove how smart the characters are or something, or how like crafty they are, and so they just like make them do these very intelligent things over and over and over, and you're like, okay, we get it. They're smart. Let's go on to like some action now or
Hmm.
something more interesting. Like I don't know. I think it's just a double-edged sword. When it's done well, it's fantastic, but if it's not done well, it's incredibly boring.
That could be said for like every single genre and trope out there.
I guess that's true. There's probably a smaller margin of error though when it comes to the thriller or the cat and mouse kind of suspense, if you will.
So it looks like we both chose correctly today. So congratulations. We both know each other very well.
I was studying all up past 2 weeks, so I know what I'm talking about this time.
Looking at my reading habits.
Yeah, like I said, with the binoculars, studying you.
So, going off of that, this past week, I feel like I've been kind of weaning myself off of the Dreamlight Valley.
Yeah, I definitely seem like you've been playing it less.
It's because I'm at a point where I'm kind of stuck and I'm waiting for more story quests to happen. But I think for more story quests to happen, I have to do some more friendship quests, which are really hard to unlock because you have to be at certain friendship levels with everyone. And then to unlock some other quests, you have to have certain biomes unlocked and you have to have other things done. Like to progress farther with one character, sometimes you have to be progressed farther with another character too, because you need them for the quest. So it's just becoming more difficult. But I still do enjoy playing it. I'm just trying to get enough Dreamlight to unlock the Forgotten Lands, which is a really expensive biome. I think it's like 15,000 Dreamlight, and I have like 10,000 right now. So it's going to take some more playing for me to get all of that. But I would say I'm not obsessed with Dreamlight Valley this week, although I am. I'd say I'm obsessed with making cold foam for my coffee.
You have been doing that like every single day.
I have. I'm trying to get back into that because with pumpkin season approaching at Starbucks, it is very easy for me to go to Starbucks every day and get me a pumpkin cream cold brew.
And spend $14 a coffee, it feels like.
Now, I'm pretty sure a pumpkin cream cold brew is going to be close to $7 for a grande. And I can't be doing that. We've got a honeymoon to save up for. So I can't be spending $7 a day getting a pumpkin cream cold brew.
No, definitely not.
So I have been playing around trying to recreate the Starbucks pumpkin cream cold brew. It is not easy. I have not mastered the consistency of it. My foam, well, I do like a sturdier foam, so I'm making it thicker. However, the one that Starbucks uses, they make it slightly thinner. Like it's more creamy. I need to figure
Yeah.
out how to make mine creamy.
Yeah, yours is really good. I really like it. But you're right, yours is like a bit sturdier, which I like for our coffees, like the at-home coffees. But yeah, Starbucks does have that like extremely creamy consistency that I have no idea how they do it.
I don't know how they do it either, and that's something that I'm trying to figure out, hence why I've been making foam every single day for the
Yeah.
past week. And it's just fun. Like, I missed creating fun foam flavors, playing barista essentially. So I would say that's what I'm obsessed with this week. I'm obsessed with cold foam coffee.
That's a good obsession. Cold foam coffee is delicious.
It is delicious, but whenever I say cold foam coffee, it just reminds me of that International Delight commercial where the girls are just like squirting the cold foam creamer on top of their coffees. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know the
They're just like
item.
sipping back and forth, like,
Oh, yeah, and they just keep putting it back on top and taking. Yeah,
and
I
I'm like,
remember that now.
people do that. Like, I can just do that. Like, my foam runs out and I can just add more.
Just keep topping it off.
I guess I'm an adult. I could do whatever I want, but it's
True.
like something I've never thought of. Like, oh, my coffee has run out of foam. I can just squirt some more on there.
Can just, put some more on there.
It's just things like that. Like, I forget that you can just do.
Yep. You can just have as much as you want.
I can do whatever I want,
You can.
but it's called self-control.
Also true, yes.
So what are you obsessed with this week?
My obsession this week has been GeoGuessr.
Can you explain what that is for the masses? I feel like they won't understand.
So GeoGuessr is a game. You'll notice that I often get obsessed with video games. But it's a game that you can get on your phone or the computer. And you are placed somewhere in the world using Google Street View. And then you have to look around and move around and guess where you are in the world.
I feel like that would be really hard if you're standing on the street.
Right. So it's using the Google car that drives around and takes pictures and maps everything out. It uses that data. So when your point of view is as if you were the camera that's on top of that car. And then you obviously can move around and it's where the car has driven around in the area that you're at. And then you can, zoom in on things and look around and try to guess where you are based on signs and, buildings and mountains and all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting and it's very fun.
I feel like I would be extremely bad at that. Like, if you were to place me on a street somewhere, like, let's pretend we're in some world where like an alien can just like pick me up with their little ship and like place me anywhere
Like
in the
a
world.
me on the Wii, you could just like pick up the me and just
Yes.
plop you
and they're
somewhere.
just like dangling in the air
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Imagine like you can actually do that to me and place me anywhere in the world on some street. I'd be looking around like I have no idea where I am.
Well, yeah, that's the point of the game.
I guess I could kind of figure it out just by seeing like what sorts of like wildlife there are around. Like if there's palm trees, if it's like deserty, sandy, dry, if it's cold, icy, snowy.
Exactly. You've got the point of the game right there.
But at the same time, there's so many places like that.
Yes, it is very difficult and it definitely humbles you very quickly and it shows your ignorance on a lot of things, which I think is like for me, it's very fun because you get to learn all the new things or all these different things. Like very often I'll see a place and I'm like absolutely certain that it's Spain, for example. And then it turns out that it's Argentina. And I'm like, that is literally across the world from each other. I thought it was in Europe. Turns out it's in South America for people who don't know where Argentina and Spain are.
That's crazy.
And so it goes to show too how like cultures can be similar in a way that, maybe from an outside perspective you don't know, but then once you learn those things, you'll play against somebody and they'll think it's Spain this time and you're like, nope, I've learned this is Argentina. And it also causes you to have to like kind of learn these other languages. Like I know now how to recognize certain things. So if you see, this one's obvious, if you see Greek characters, you're in Greece, naturally. But then there's a level deeper where if you see like certain characters that have like lines through the O, you're most likely in Greenland or Iceland. There's another one where if you see a lot of like double consonants or double vowels, you're in Finland. Learning languages for like a lot of Eastern European areas have Cyrillic. So you have to learn like the differences between all of those regions. It just becomes super interesting and it's very fun.
Now, what happens when you see a Spanish word? Because there are so many countries that speak some dialect of Spanish.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can identify where you are. So a lot of times you see a sign that's Spanish. I'll look at which side of the road are we driving on, because if you're driving on what I call the wrong way, which is just the European,
Hmm.
you know, you're typically going to be in Spain or Portugal. However, that's not, there's some caveats because I think there is some countries in South America that drive on, again, what I call the wrong way. But if you're driving the right way, then you're most likely in like South America or Mexico or something along those lines.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different, cool, interesting things that you learn about the areas. And then there's a little cheat code in case you're interested in playing. If you look for signs that have URLs, like to a website, if you're in another country that's not America, typically instead of .com, they have dot and then their country code. So like Canada's .ca, the United Kingdom is .uk, and so a lot of the countries have those. And so you can kind of use that as a little cheat code. They're not always correct, and especially in European countries where they're a lot more interconnected in European countries. So quite often, like someone from Romania will go to Slovakia and open a business or something, so they still have a Romanian URL. So there's a lot of caveats to it, but that's kind of a good rule of thumb.
Well, it sounds very educational.
It is actually. I know a lot of schools do use it as like sort of a fun thing to do as part of education. You do have to pay for it now though. Back in the day you didn't have to and it was all free. You do have to pay for it now, which I think is fair.
Well, we have two very different obsessions.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what, I guess you're kind of working on reading the same things this week, aren't you? Sea of Monsters, ACOTAR. You gonna line up anything else that you want to read?
After I read ACOTAR, the plan is to go to the next Witcher book. And then once I finish Sea of Monsters, I think I'm just going to go right into the next Percy Jackson. I think I'm just going to read all of those first 5 books together because typically they sort of coincide with each other. So, what about you?
Well, I am currently reading Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken, and it's very interesting. It's sort of like a Legend of King Arthur retelling. So, for most of the book, the characters are in Avalon, and it's really interesting because they're like back in whenever King Arthur was, the legend was told, I guess, like the Dark Ages, 1600s. Is that when he was supposed to be a thing?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around there. It's in I think it's actually like 1300s,
I don't know.
something like that.
I'm not super familiar with King Arthur. However, the stories have always intrigued me, like Knights of the Round Table, all that kind of stuff, The Sword and the Stone. That's all like in the same vein.
Right, yeah.
So this book kind of like takes all of that and sort of sets it in the present. And there's this like fantastical element where the characters are able to go between different worlds and different realms to do their jobs because they're called hollowers. They're basically thieves and they like steal things and they get paid for it. And it's just interesting that they can travel between worlds and then they end up in Avalon. And now the story is like steering towards these legends surrounding King Arthur, and it's super interesting. And it makes me super excited to read my aardvark pick for this month, which is The Bright Sword that we had originally talked about for our July new releases episode. And that's a big boy. He's like 700 pages long. But this sort of retelling of those legends is making me super excited to explore the legends even farther.
Yeah, that big boy one, I was also thinking about at some point maybe reading that one too, because I remember being very interested by that one.
Yes. So Silver in the Bone, it is a YA fantasy. So it's not like super hard to understand, but I am loving it. I'm almost done. I'm nearly 70% through it, so I could easily finish it up very, very soon.
Probably next day or two.
So, this was another great episode. Loved getting to know all of the book of the month picks. Loved guessing correctly what you would have picked.
Yeah, I'm just happy I got it right this week.
Yes, you did. And I'm excited to keep going with my current read. I'm excited for you to keep going with ACOTAR. I need to know your thoughts on it.
I get so excited to hear more about Feyre or read more about Feyre. I just like that they make fun of her name in the very beginning. Feyre. So now that's how I read it every single time.
Well, that's how it's pronounced.
I know, but her sister was trying to be a jerk about it in Feyre. So that's just how I always read it now, with an extra hard "r" on the end.
Okay, then. Well, you can go read about Feyre and her journey, and I will be reading about these kids in Avalon.
Exciting.
It is exciting. So I'm going to go do that, and I hope everyone has a fantastic week reading and otherwise, and happy reading.